short bhajan, Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya, and then I'll speak the first part of this exposition on Gita Jaya. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. First, I would like to welcome everyone and also our public, general public, for attending this function, which is to celebrate the Gita Jayanti, the appearance of Bhagavad Gita. In the spiritual realm, everything is chintamani, everything is alive. In this world we have living beings and dead matter. And every living being is encased in dead matter. And so we'll be speaking about that, how Krishna, with his transcendental wisdom, explains how we can separate ourselves by higher consciousness from being identified with matter. But on the spiritual platform, there is no matter. So, Bhagavad Gita, or any scripture, is personified. In the Bhagavad Purana, in the second to the last chapter of the 10th canto, there are prayers by the personified Vedas. The Vedas also are personal, and they have their personification, and then they manifest in the sound vibration. Just as we're chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, and the Maha Mantra or Hare Krishna mantra is the sound vibration. As it says in the Puranas, Vinutvam Nama Namino. There's no difference between the Lord and his sound vibration and his name. So, Gita manifests. Gita exists eternally, but the Gita manifests or becomes unmanifest according to the need. Just like the Lord says that he comes when there is a necessity. So today, in this first part of our series of lectures and considerations about Gita Jayanti, I'd like to discuss first a little background, and then we'll go into the Bhagavad Gita itself. Om Jnana Timirandasya Vinamjana Shakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmaya Sri Gurave Namah Vichaitanyamano Vishlam Shkapitam Yena Buddhale Swayam Bhakata Mukyam Taratishva Adantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapara Kamanam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Upam Sukutatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vihantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Shakam Vitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Bhakta Kanchana Gaurani Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shivan Vasudha Devi Pranami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Vipasnidhu Vyeva Pakitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Hare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyatya Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shiva Shri Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, offer my respectful obeisances to my Guru Maharaj and the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada spoke a very beautiful introduction to Bhagavad Gita, which all of you can read from your Bhagavad Gita. Hopefully, after this series, those who don't have it can obtain a copy of Bhagavad Gita as it is, which is the most authoritative and authentic rendition of Bhagavad Gita. So he says that there are so many editions of Bhagavad Gita, and when he was requested to recommend one edition, he said, it's very difficult because most people include within the Bhagavad Gita some self-interest. But actually, Bhagavad Gita can only be understood as the exposition of the Supreme Lord to lead us to the point of no self-interest, or better said, real self-interest, understanding that the self is part and parcel. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that the living entity is a fragmental portion of the Lord. But the interesting thing about this fragmental portion, just like when we fragment something, generally it means that one whole became divided into many parts. But in this case, there can be unlimited fragments, as it says in the Ishupanishad, Om Purnamada Purnamidam, that from the complete whole comes many complete units. So also ourselves, the living entities, we are complete units, meaning that we are complete spiritual beings, part and parcel of the Supreme Personality. So, this is the basic introduction to how to understand this particular Bhagavad Gita, meaning the will of the Lord. There are two ways that we can see the will of the divine. One is that I have my desires, and the duty of God is to fulfill them. This is the general understanding in all world religion. That I pray to God, I want this, I want that, I want this, and then His job is to fulfill it. And I do some yagyas or some sacrifices or some prayers, and this is our main. But Bhagavad Gita presents a different scenario. The Bhagavad Gita says that the supreme will, which is already manifest, not only in some spiritual realm far off in some heavenly celestial kingdom, but that supreme will, Mama Vartmanavardhante, Krishna said, that my will, everyone is following my will. The difference is, those who are spiritually enlightened, they follow the direct will as stated in Bhagavad Gita by the Supreme Person Himself. And those who are not so inclined, they follow the modes of nature, which will be the subject of our third day. So Bhagavad Gita is divided into three sections. The first section, or the first 6 chapters, explain Karma Yoga and the perfection of Karma Yoga, or Niskama Karma Yoga. I'll explain this a little later. The second part, the middle section, chapters 7 through 12, explain Bhakti, or transcendental devotion, unalloyed devotion to the Supreme. And the last part, chapters 13 through 18, explain Jnana Yoga, how to apply knowledge, the knowledge that has been gained in the first part, its application in relation to our situation within this world, and then how to come to the perfection of spiritual evolution, which is to surrender unto the Supreme. So this is the ultimate message of Bhagavad Gita. Also Bhagavad Gita, all Vedic literatures, and all the Vedas speak about 3 levels of understanding, which are called Sambandha, Abhigaya, and Prayojana. Sambandha means to come together with the Supreme, or in this case, the living entity becoming one, not one in identity, but one in desire, or one in the will of the Supreme. That is Sambandha. And although the Sambandha is there throughout the Gita, the first part of it is really to establish that Sambandha. Then Abhideya, how to practice. Once I have that relationship with the Supreme, how to execute it. Because the whole idea of Bhagavad Gita is to express the eternality of the soul. And the eternality of the soul means that the soul always existed and will always exist. As Krishna says in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Najayate mriyate bhāgatājin mayam bhavita vānavīya. There's never been a time when the living entity came into existence, is coming into existence, or will come into existence. It's always existing. No. Ajo, without any birth, and the eternal Shashvato. So this is the nature. And although the body will die, the soul will never die. So, so these three subjects, Sambandha is the first part of Bhagavad Gita, Abhideya, how to practice it, and Prayojana is contained within the second part and the third part of Bhagavad Gita. So, Krishna begins the Bhagavad Gita he's instructing Arjuna. But why does Arjuna need instruction? When Arjuna, all of his life, was together with Krishna. He was always hearing from Krishna. He was living with Krishna. He was speaking with Krishna. He was serving Krishna. Why does he need, at this point, actually toward the very end of his sojourn with Krishna, on this time, on this planet, why would he need the instruction? And the answer is he didn't need the instruction. But Krishna used him as an instrument, as Krishna states in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Nimittamatram Bhavasamta Sachi. O Arjuna, you should understand. And now I've shown you this universal form. You should understand that everything is under my control. And everyone on this battlefield is already destined to die, except for you, the Pandavas. Practically speaking, everyone else will die. So therefore, you should be my instrument. It's already done, but I want you to be my instrument. This is the position of the Supreme. Although the Supreme could do anything and everything, he wants his devotee to take the credit. He doesn't need credit. He doesn't need points. Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is the source of everything. And therefore, but he wants his devotee, that person who sacrifices everything, to be glorified for that level of sacrifice. Just like here in Trinidad, yajna is very popular as a pious activity, as a spiritual activity. And what is the purpose of yajna? The purpose is to, through performance of a sacrifice, one comes closer to the Supreme. Of course, there are many different types of yajna, but Krishna explains the Supreme yajna, and we'll get into that tomorrow more in detail. We're in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So, the point is that Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita for all of us. Bhagavad Gita, which is also known as Gita Upanishad, was spoken by Krishna for the benefit of everyone in this age, which is Kali Yuga. This is the most materialistic age where quarrel, hypocrisy are abound. Of course, these things don't exist in Trinidad, but in other places. So the point is, the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna condensed all of the knowledge, and we'll speak about this in our third day, all of the knowledge of all the Upanishads into one 45-minute dialogue. And Arjuna understood it in 45 minutes. And some of us may take 45 lifetimes to understand this Bhagavad Gita. Hopefully just maybe 45 months or 45 years maybe, hopefully. By that time we can all come to a full understanding of Bhagavad Gita. So, Krishna begins, or the Bhagavad Gita begins, because Krishna actually begins speaking in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So it begins by the understanding, what's going on, the entrance into the battle of Kurukshetra. Krishna, the Pandavas had gone through Pandavas had gone through so many difficulties. And Krishna, being a neutral party and being the Supreme Lord, he made many efforts through sending people like Akrura to speak with Dhritarashtra trying to avoid the war. And he also himself went, and Dhritarashtra said to him, I know that you are the Supreme Person. I know that you are the Supreme Transcendent, but I can't give up my attachment. Please excuse me. Now this is something very similar to all of us. We all have so many attachments. Even when we hear Bhagavad Gita, even those who may hear it on a regular basis, we're always confronted with this dilemma, this dichotomy in our life of this is what I should be doing, but this is where I'm at right now. So Bhagavad Gita is spoken to take us from that point of so many attachments to the point of supreme transcendence, where we can actually experience ananda, or transcendental bliss. So the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, the first verse, is a very, very important verse. I'm going to speak about several different verses as a progression throughout the Gita, so that we can understand different aspects of the Gita. So the first verse, Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre, Samavetta, Yudhsava. So Dhritarashtra is asking his servant, Sanjaya, what are they doing? What are they doing? The Mamaka Pandavas Chaiva. Mamaka, my sons, and the Pandavas. So he revealed in that particular verse that the Pandavas are outside. My sons, I want them. I want this war to go on. So this was his desire. Are they fighting? Are they going to fight? What's happening? He's asking. And of course, Sanjaya, sometimes we're very proud of our technology nowadays. We have cameras and broadcasts, and nanotechnology, cell phones, and all kinds of... But actually, technology has been around for a long time. Sanjaya could see the whole battlefield. Not only could he see it, he could hear what they were speaking. And he didn't have any nanotechnology. He didn't have any little chips or anything. He just had the technology which has been there for eternity. The technology of mantra, the technology of perception. And he could see everything and hear everything. So, this was Dhritarashtra's petition, that Himakurva, what is happening, Sanjaya? What's happening? Of course, he is expressing, I want war, because the word Dharmakshetra means Kurukshetra was a place of sacrifices, and Dharmakshetra was a place of religiosity. So Dhritarashtra was very concerned. Of course, Krishna arranged this, that the battle would take place on in a spiritual place, where the Pandavas would naturally feel their advantage. And they did have the advantage because they had Krishna on their side. So he made this question. And then his son Duryodhana begins to also express his concern. He's saying, he chastises Drona that you made a mistake. You made a mistake. You trained this Drishtadyumna, and he could kill you. So you better fight more. You better not give in to him. You better not favor the Pandavas. Bhishma is already favoring them, so you shouldn't favor them. And so then, progressively throughout the first chapter, this whole description of the setup, the battlefield is there. Then Arjuna says, after all this is going on, they sound their conch shells, and the Kauravas become very upset, and it was very disheartening to them to hear these transcendental conch shells of Krishna and the Pandavas. They also blew their conch shells, but the Pandavas were unaffected. And then Arjuna tells Krishna, please draw my chariot between. I want to see who they are. Of course, Krishna understood by that action that Arjuna, he was having some doubts. He already knew who was there. He already knew who he had to contend with. But still, he was manifesting these doubts. And those doubts were created, first of all, by his compassion. Being a Vaishnava, being a devotee of the Lord, he was feeling compassion for his family members. This is natural. One who is situated in spirituality feels compassion for others. But he was also feeling self-interest, which is revealed by how he addressed Krishna. Kim now, that Krishna, Kim na Bogina Govinda, Kim Bogais, Jivatena Cha. Krishna, what will we gain from this battle? What will we gain if we gain the kingdom, Raja? Or if we gain, what happiness will we derive from defeating Yesham Artikam Shitam? No, from defeating those who we love. Rajam Bhogan Sukani Cha. How will we enjoy the kingdom? How will we be happy? So he was expressing also self-interest. And he expressed in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, how will we, this could be Kulakshaya, how will we maintain Kula Dharma, or the tradition of family, and all these wonderful traditions that must be there to maintain society. And he was also concerned, he expressed concern about acquiring sinful reaction. And he just became decisive, to the point where after all of that, he told Krishna, I can't fight. Even though he had sworn that anyone who ever even speaks about me putting down my bow, I shall defeat them. But yet, at the end of the chapter, he's saying, I'm going to give up my bow. Put it down, I can't fight. So then, we come into the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And the second chapter, I'm going to spend a little more time, because it is the summary of the whole, the introduction and summary of the whole Bhagavad Gita. The whole philosophy of Bhagavad Gita is stated in that second chapter. And then everything is nicely explained throughout the rest. But to introduce that second chapter, we're going to do a little bhajan, which is very much related to the teachings. And I'll explain that bhajan in relation to what we're going to understand from the second chapter. So, we'll chant this bhajan Hudre Mana, and then explain briefly and how it relates to the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita.
Oh
So in the beginning of the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna addresses the dilemma of Arjuna. Now, in modern times, most people would probably think Arjuna, he's got it right. He wants to be peaceful. He's looking for a solution. He doesn't want to fight. This is the best thing. And Krishna, here's this war god again, wanting to create, destroy. But so Arjuna, of course, in the first chapter, he had addressed Krishna with three particular names, Govinda, saying, you're the one who gives pleasure to the senses. What about my senses? But we're supposed to give pleasure to the senses of Krishna. That is the duty of the living entity, just like the hand gives pleasure to the body by feeding it, by bringing food, or by doing work that's beneficial for the body. If you have some muscular problem and your hand just starts going off and you can't control it, you wouldn't feel very happy with your hand. So, and then he said also, he addressed Krishna's Madhusudana. You killed the Madhu demon, but you didn't kill Yashoda or Nanda Maharaj. So you want me to kill my family members, you don't kill your family members. It was a little challenging. And he said, you're Janardana. You maintain all living entities. So if you want them to be destroyed, you're also Janardana. You're also the destroyer of living entities. So you can eliminate all of them you want. No? This was Arjuna's argument. And then, so Krishna, with his compassion, he says to Arjuna, that how has this mentality come upon you? This is not the mentality of an Arya. An Arya means a person who is, it's not a race, it's not a group, it's not a privileged group of people, or it means persons who have higher consciousness. This is not a dignified mentality of an Arya like yourself. It will not bring you happiness or fame. So then Krishna begins to instruct Arjuna. And he says, give up this petty weakness. And then Arjuna says to Krishna, the turning point of Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna expresses his grief in the most emphatic way. He says to Krishna, that there's a miserly weakness that has come over me. I don't know what my real duty is. I'm confused. This is an important expression by Arjuna, because we're also all very confused about what we should be doing, especially those who have some knowledge or information about spirituality, and at the same time we have all of these desires and attractions for this world pulling us in another direction. So, therefore, Arjuna says something very important. Krishna, please tell me tell me clearly what is best for me. Don't tell me what I want to hear. Most of us, when we address the Supreme, we put in the words, we put in what we want to hear, what we want to get. But Arjuna is expressing the real position of a devotee of the Lord. That you tell me what you want me to do, tell me what is best for me. I am your disciple, a soul surrendered unto you, please instruct me. So this is the beginning of the surrender process. Arjuna is showing us here in this part of Bhagavad Gita what mentality we have to adopt to be able to understand Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada says in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, unless you, at least theoretically, take the accept that Krishna is the Supreme, you will never understand the essence of Bhagavad Gita. So then Arjuna, he says, basically, the next verse, that even if you give me even if you give me a kingdom which is with all the sovereignty of the demigods, Rajam Surano, no, I won't be happy. Otherwise, Arjuna is saying, you can have a palace, you can have a kingdom, you can have a country, you can have a planet. No. But as long as you're within the material atmosphere, you'll never be happy. No. And then Arjuna says, my Lord, I can't fight. I'm so confused I can't fight. So then Krishna smiles. And he doesn't immediately accept that Arjuna is ready to serve. And therefore, he gives two instructions, very essential instructions at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, that are the instructions of what is the mentality or the consciousness that one has to have in approaching the Supreme. He says, you're lamenting for something that's not worthy of lamentation. Otherwise, you're lamenting for the material body, your body, the bodies of your grandfather. Krishna had specifically placed Arjuna in front of Bhishma and Drona so that he would feel this compassion and Bhagavad Gita would be spoken. He said that you're lamenting. You're lamenting for dead matter. Of course, sometimes we may lament for dead matter. We have a nice car or something and someone crashes it, then we may lament. But ultimately, hopefully if we don't get hurt, then it ultimately doesn't affect us. It only affects us according to the degree of our attachment to that object. So he's saying that, why are you lamenting? Because in this world, there's always going to be, just like we just sang in this song, Bhaja Humrema, that my dear mind, the devotee Govinda Das, he addresses the mind as some foreign entity. Krishna, of course, later on in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, when we get to it, Krishna speaks about how we can see the mind as one with us or very different from us. And I'll get into that in a few minutes. So, he tells Arjuna that you have to learn, that Sita Attapa, Bhatta Karishana, the hot, cold, wind and rain, all these things, all these different situations. When it's hot, we want cold. When it's cold, we want hot. That this is the duality of this world. You have to learn to tolerate it and transcend it. And this is this begins a series of teaching. And then Krishna makes his essential point, Antavanti Nekdeha. This material body is temporary. It will perish. Nitya Shokta Shakitinaha. But the soul is eternal and will never perish. This is the beginning of the basic instruction. Without understanding this, there's a little sign right here that says, as long as we think I'm the body, as long as one says my soul, then you're totally in reverse to the reality. The reality is I'm the soul and this is my body. Of course, this is essential teaching in Hinduism and even Buddhism or most Oriental philosophies. But then Krishna goes beyond it. And he says to Arjuna, then he gives a series of instructions about the temporary nature of the body and the permanent nature of the soul. That don't lament, the soul can never be affected by the matter. The soul cannot suffer. The soul cannot be cut or dried or burnt or moistened. None of these things can happen to the soul. And he said that the soul is actually amazing, but people cannot understand the soul. In the Upanishads, it says that the soul has 8 qualities, which are deathless, ageless, sinless, without grief, without hunger, without thirst, blissful, and can realize its desires instantaneously. These are the qualities of the soul. One may think, oh, well, I want to get on the soul platform, then I can realize all my desires. But when you're on that platform, your only desire will be spiritual. As long as you think that way, just like sometimes it's said that if you don't desire anything, then you get everything. So one will think, yeah, let me not desire anything so I can get everything. But that doesn't work like that. And so Krishna is instructing Arjuna. And then he says, even if you consider that the soul is temporary, you're a Kshatriya, and your duty is to fight. And if you don't fight, everyone will insult you and call you a coward. So whatever you think, you should fight. And then Krishna sums up that part of Bhagavad Gita by saying, Sukatuke same kritva labha labho jaya jayo. Whether in happiness or distress, victory or defeat, success or failure, just fight. This is your duty. This is what I want you to do. This will give you the greatest success and will give you freedom from all sinful activity. And then Krishna begins to explain some very important things in the second chapter. He begins by saying that, of course, Krishna hasn't revealed himself yet. He's hinted, but he hasn't revealed himself as the Supreme Person. So he says, anything you do, anything you do, even if it's just a very small service to the Supreme, the benefit is eternal. And therefore, he gives a very pertinent instruction, which our spiritual master Srila Prabhupada said, this is one of the most important instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, that that one should have one pointed consciousness, fixed with determination on the Supreme. Because otherwise, material consciousness means my consciousness is branched out. I have my family department, social department, work department, and there's religious department and this department. No. Yeah. Krishna says everything is included in the realm of spirituality. And this is the art of yoga. And then Krishna begins to explain the art of yoga. And explaining. And he says something that's very interesting, especially people here in Trinidad, many people, probably most of the people who are hearing this broadcast are, have some inclination toward Hinduism or Vedic philosophy. And Krishna says something, Traigunya Vishaya Vedanis, Traigunya Bhavarana. Be careful of the Vedas. What? The Vedas is the essence of everything. He says, be careful. Because the Vedas speak mostly about fruitive activity, how to navigate this world and try to be materially happy for some time, because you can't be materially happy all the time. He says, but Arjuna, the real purpose of life is Nishchaitunya Arjuna, to rise above these three modes of nature that the Vedas are working within to bring us gradually. But sometimes it's so gradual that one doesn't complete the process. So he says, Nirdvando Nitya Sattva. You should be free from duality and always situated in goodness. And that way, Nir Yoga Kshema Atmavan. Don't try to acquire more than necessary in this world, because whatever you acquire is difficult to acquire, more difficult to conserve or protect, and even more difficult to give up. And we've all experienced that. So this is a very essential turning point in Bhagavad Gita. Then Krishna elaborates on this more and more throughout the chapter. And he finishes up the second chapter by explaining the symptoms of a transcendentalist. Then Arjuna, in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is confused. He's saying, wait a minute, Krishna, you're telling me to transcend, but you're telling me to work. So which, do you want me to renounce or you want me to work? You know? Because generally we think this way. We think in black and white. We don't see how everything can be done, you know, under the umbrella or the auspices of spirituality. We think, yeah, there's spiritual and there's material, and I have my spiritual time and my material time. And so Arjuna was thinking this way. So Krishna began to explain in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita the art of spirituality through sacrifice. Of course, he begins that explanation by saying that that sacrifice which is done for the Supreme is perfect, but sacrifice that is done for material things just keeps us in the cycle of samsara, birth and death. And then he says that actually I've created this world. Sahatyagya prajashushta kuruvacha shati anena prasavishadvam eshavoshushta kamadu. He says, I have created this world along with the process of yajna, but a particular type of yajna. So that all the devas and the humanity and all living entities can live in peace by doing yajna, which means our whole life should be a yajna. Not that I do my yajna for an hour and then I go watch television. But everything I do becomes part of that yajna. And then you'll be happy materially because the yajna will provide you with what you need, but it will also help you transcend, which is the actual purpose of human life. And then Krishna explains different results of yajna, that through yajna you get rain, from rain you get grains, from grains you can do sacrifice, through sacrifice one comes in contact with the Supreme, and this is the actual objective of yajna, not just to do something to please one of the devas so that they can give me something so I can be happy in this world. Because material happiness, Krishna explains this throughout Bhagavad Gita, material happiness comes and goes. And whatever material happiness you achieve, you'll have to give it up. And giving it up is very difficult. So, throughout the third chapter, Krishna explains the process of yajna and how that yajna can be perfected and how it can become totally spiritualized. And then, Arjuna, he says, yeah, I understand, but sometimes you want to do this process of yajna or devote one's life to the Supreme, but there's some compelling force that pulls you into material consciousness. What is that? And then Krishna says a very important verse of Bhagavad Gita, that what is that? Kama esha krodha esha rajaguna samudvara. He said this is called lust, Arjuna, which ultimately is converted into anger or frustration. This is mahashano mahaprapam. It's the all-devouring, sinful, greatest enemy of the living entity. You have to give up this lust because kama rupena kaunteya dushparena namecha. Lust will simply burn more and more and pull us into the material existence. So he's telling, and then he concludes by saying that the senses are higher than matter, the mind is higher than the senses, the intelligence is, otherwise he's saying we have to ascend, not to stay on the platform of the senses, but utilize the mind to ascend through a well-trained intellect, the intellect which is bathed in the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, and then we come to the platform of the soul, which is above Gita. And then Krishna goes into the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. In the 4th chapter, Krishna explains that Evam parapraptam, that Imam Rajarshayo Vidu, that this parampara, this transcendental knowledge descends from the Supreme through a chain of disciplic succession. But that has been lost. And therefore I'm speaking this today to you. And because you have 2 requisites, this is a very important part of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna explains, what are the requisites, what are the prerequisites for being a recipient of this transcendental knowledge? That you, because you're my devotee and you're my friend, there are different types of friendship, which are suhrit, and which is the greatest friendship. It means one who really cares about someone else and is willing to do anything for them. And this is the position of Krishna, who lives within our heart and is willing to constantly remind us of our real duty. And then there's mitra, friends for whom we have some affection. And then there's bandhu, official friends, through family or work or something like that, official friends. So different types of friendship. So Krishna says, when you become my intimate friend and you are my devotee, then you're qualified. Then you can understand this Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to understand. And then Arjuna said, wait a minute. You said you explained this to the sun god. He lived millions of years ago and you're here right now. And then Krishna says, yes, because you are unborn, but because you change your bodies, you don't remember. I don't change my body. My body, Prakritim Swam Ishtaya, my body is transcendental. And I come, yada yada hi dharma shabdhani bhavati bharata, yutanam dharmash. I come, I appear whenever there is a need to reestablish dharma or spirituality. And then Krishna says that if you can understand me and the purpose for which I come, Janma Karma Shame Divyam, but understand me in truth. Just like many people, they may think, especially those who are brought up in Hinduism, they may think that I know Krishna. But Krishna is unlimited. And therefore Krishna is saying that I will reveal myself to you as you become my devotee, my friend, and as you progress in your spiritual life. So then Krishna goes on in the 4th chapter to explain, first he explained karma, or how to do yajnas and different sacrifices, karma yoga. And then now he's explaining the yoga of knowledge. And he explains it throughout the 4th chapter until he comes to the very end. And I'll conclude with this point for today, because soon we'll have our heartbeat. He explains that to understand this unlimited Supreme. Now, here again, Krishna has not fully revealed himself, although he's hinted, but he hasn't fully revealed that he is that Supreme. He'll do that later in the 7th chapter. So, he says to Arjuna that you have to get this transcendental knowledge from this chain of cyclic succession. Tadvidi pranipatena. How will you do it? Pratipatena. You have to be humble. You have to have a humble, submissive attitude before that Supreme, which of course is Krishna. But Krishna hasn't revealed that yet. Pariprashna. And you have to make relevant questions. Pariprashna doesn't mean any question. It means relevant questions to your spiritual activity, because Krishna qualifies it by saying sevaya. Those questions which will result in serving the Supreme, in doing the eternal activity of the soul, which is seva, which is to serve the Supreme Personality of God. And therefore, upadekshati te jnanam. This is a person who can give you knowledge, can teach you this knowledge. Why? Because they have realized that knowledge themselves. So this is the introduction of the, although Krishna has also spoken about it in the 2nd chapter, the principle of Guru, of surrendering. But now Krishna makes it very clear, with humility, with inquiry, and with service, then offered to a spiritually qualified person, the spiritual master, the Guru, you can come into contact with the Supreme. And then Krishna, with that, concludes the 4th chapter. Now these beginning chapters are very instructive, so I'm taking a little more time. Of course, I can't in 3 hours explain Bhagavad Gita in detail, but I can explain some aspects of it. And in our next session, we will go into understanding the yoga process and the perfection of the yoga process. And then the process of bhakti. So thank you very much for your attention today. Now we will have our peak, and hopefully everyone can stay tuned in for this series, and we can properly glorify by mutual cooperation, properly glorify the Srimad Bhagavad. Hare Krishna.
So Mr. Prasad Swami Maharaj ki, Jagannatha Srila Prabhupada ki. So now inviting everyone to please stand for Arti.
Hare